art teacher, super popular teacher, wonderful writer, speaker. You wrote a huge tome on Sedna, didn't you, a few years ago? I mean, it's very comprehensive. And then a year or so back, New Stars for New Era, which we talked about in our last conversation, I use as a reference book all the time. And then more recently, a dwarf planet we're going to focus on today, initially, is Ixion. And these are super little books that you're bringing out, very short books on each dwarf planet, because I think you've got one on Hermea, one on Ixion, and you've got one on Maki, okay, higher octave of Uranus. So and it's great to have those as just very concentrated information on those dwarf planets. So really looking forward to this conversation. Alan runs the Dwarf Planet University. You're founder of that a few years ago, and you run some wonderful classes. So he is the man to go to have a structured understanding of these dwarf planets. So, Alan, I think you'd like to start with talking about Mercury biquintile Ixion. Now, would you like to firstly, because biquintiles aren't widely used by astrologers. I generally don't use them myself, I have to confess, until I've started to understand this in the last day or so, preparing for this conversation. I'm going to be using them in the future for sure. So should we start by you explaining the meaning of a biquintile aspect, what it is and what it means?
Lovely. Yes, totally. So yes, they're not so well used, but what with the outer planets, because the outer planets move slowly, even the biquintiles, or the lesser aspects, are important because they stay for longer, and so it gives them more focus. So biquintile is two quintiles. 72 degrees is the quintile, so it's 144 degrees. And the 72 degrees divides the circle in 5, which is a pentagram, a sort of a magic shape. And so it's a kind of a magical aspect which joins the planets at either end at a deep level. It's like a flow that works at a really deep level to integrate the energies at either end. So you can take it to a new evolutionary level. I call them evolutionary flows. You have to engage with them. They're like superpowers that you have to practice otherwise they're just imagined. They're imagined superpowers, but you have to practice them. The more you practice them, the more you engage with them, the more you can sort of use them, the more they manifest, the stronger they become.
Right, and so that's really about just understanding each end of the aspect. So here we're talking about Mercury and Ixion. So Mercury, I think people understand, it's very much the messenger, the communicator. It's currently, yes, in Gemini and its own sign. So
just been going over the Uranus.
Today, conjunction Uranus Sedna conjunction. So wow, this is the day of brilliance. We hit a lucky day, Alan, to have this conversation. So the day of brilliance and genius and thinking out of the box. And so it's our communicator really, in essence, and very much linked to Uranus as well. Uranus is the higher octave of Mercury. So we've got a lot going on today on the 18th, and I'll get this video out English time, Western world time today. But what I loved also was you described the biquintile as unique ways of thinking and speaking, disregarding conventional boundaries. Yeah. And I actually love the archetype of Ixion as the lawless brother of Pluto. You talk, in some depth about the symbolism of Ixion, because he has two very different expressions, doesn't he?
Yes, he does. I think a lot of these outer planets do, in the sense that they have different expression, the aspects of consciousness, and so they manifest differently in our lives depending on our current level of consciousness. And when we're unconscious of Ixion, yes, the myth, and the myths talk about the sort of the unconscious level frequently. The myth is heavy. It's sort of, he's a sociopath, and things don't go well for him.
He murders his father-in-law eventually, doesn't he?
Well, pretty early on.
Murders his father-in-law. He's given a second chance by Zeus. He tries to then rape Zeus's wife Hera. He got again spun off on a burning wheel of eternity, into wherever. So it does not go well.
Not going well for him, no. So, but he didn't learn from his mistakes. That was the problem there. He had two things that he didn't do. One was he didn't learn from his mistake that first time killing his father-in-law. He was given a second chance, and then he sort of just let base passions take over again. And that's the danger with Ixion. It's the base passions. And he didn't learn from his mistakes. And look, he was violating guest-host relations when he killed his father-in-law. He invited him to a feast and then killed him. And he was violating guest-host relations when he tried to rape Zeus's wife. And so it's all about those unspoken agreements that we have in our relationships, where we've got spoken agreements and we've got unspoken agreements with everyone. When we walk down the street, we don't look in people's eyes, we don't touch them. There are various sort of unspoken agreements. And so as we get more conscious of Ixion and we realise that sort of that passion that Ixion's got, where he sort of wants to do what he wants to do in the myth there, that's wonderful. The passion is wonderful. There's nothing wrong with the passion. It's just that he doesn't learn anything from it, and he's not sensitive to the boundaries, the sort of,
That's his sort of lower expression, that he can kill with no remorse or compunction. He has no moral compass, and I think we can see some echoes of this in society today.
Absolutely.
But I love his positive expression. So I'd love you to explore that.
Well, it comes from that passion that's there in the myth, and he sort of Ixion is in gravitational sync orbitally with Neptune, and so just like Pluto, and so he's a spiritual. He's got a spiritual energy from that link there, and as we develop spiritually, we need to be able to follow our passion, to follow our bliss. The map, the guardrails are kind of not there in current society. We're in a period of change where we're moving from sort of the old religious way of sort of thinking about sort of spirituality into a way that we can sort of follow our bliss, follow our personal spiritual path. And that's the strength that Ixion gives us. Once we get onto the spiritual path, where we can follow our bliss and ask for forgiveness afterwards if we step on any toes, rather than permission before. And there's a freedom in that. There's a freedom and there's an authenticity in that. And that's I think the beauty of Ixion. So
yeah, I so often think of the Fool in the Tarot, knapsack on his back, whistling a tune, finding his bliss through simple joy and going beyond the normal mainstream rules, regulations, mores, etc., just going his own way. And I think there's such a strong part of the zeitgeist is so much about that today. But he's also, and your little book here really helped me go deeper with Ixion. It really did. That he operates outside the boundaries of mainstream society. I'm quoting your words here. Demanding to understand the basis of rules. Are the rules that we are following supposedly the correct rules? And that has such power in these times. Exposing hypocrisy, revealing uncomfortable truths, doesn't just think outside the box, demolishes the box. I love that, demolishes the box. Audacious, uncompromising, courageous questioning of the system. So he's an activist, an innovator, a radical being a rebel, a pioneer, and he breaks new ground to find a better truth.
Yeah.
And he
Yeah.
does it with brilliance and creativity, and that's likely to see. We will likely see some of that today because of that conjunction of Mercury, Uranus, Sedna, and
That's it. And the biquintile to Ixion. Totally.
to Ixion.
Exactly. Exactly. Yes, it's that freedom, that authenticity that we need in these times to navigate sort of. We're frequently trying to fit in with other people and with society and so on, and that's that's gong gong. That's the lower gong gong. But we need that higher Ixion energy to sort of really to break free and to follow our heart in terms of particularly our spiritual path, because we're in such a time of change where we're not really able to sort of, the old paths are just not working anymore. Really, it's sort of and society is changing so fast that we're having to change our habits in a way that where we can follow our passion, that's going to obviously be best for us.
But there's a real, profound, clear authenticity with Ixion, isn't there? He's got to do his own thing, go his own way, and demand truth. Very like Eris in that way, I think.
Yes, yeah. Eris is sort of demanding a full truth, a sort of a higher truth, whereas Ixion is demanding a personal truth, a sort of a truth in the moment, a truth now for me, sort of thing.
And I love the way, and just for everybody out there, if you're not familiar, Ixion has a 251-year orbit, so just 3 years longer than Pluto. And you point out also in the book that it also has a resonance not only to Neptune in its spiritual side, but also to Pluto. And Pluto, of course, the whole myth of Pluto is all about the underworld and how Persephone was kidnapped and taken down to Hades, etc. But you say that Ixion, and I love this, that Pluto operates more literally with the underground and the underworld, but Ixion operates more with the monsters out in the open. I thought that was another, brilliant observation with what we're going through. So, are the rules we're playing by the right ones? And there was a huge demonstration, actually, a very peaceful demonstration in London on I think it was Saturday, and many millions of people were out there. So that was, I was just seeing Ixion. So of course, it's Uranus as well. It's many astrological aspects that we can see right now. But Ixion seems to be reinforcing a lot of what Uranus is doing. And of course, the Sun is coming to its annual conjunction with Uranus on the 22nd this week.
Yeah. Right.
And that's another ignition point. So, what helped me in your book as well, the studies you did of various people. Prince Harry has Ixion on his midheaven.
Yes, and he resigns as a prince. Who does that? I mean, that's only someone with Ixion on the MC would sort of not want to be a prince. That's kind of what everyone wants to be.
So publicly, midheaven, it was so public. And that's right. Family lineage, isn't it? MCIC Axis, the family lineage in line, and your public face in it.
That's right. That's right. And I think he had Sedna transiting through his fourth house at that time, so he was sort of prioritising home and family and so on, rather than and Sedna's all about that heritage and sort of breaking free from that and doing the next thing and so on. So,
very, very clear. I think for the world, everyone will understand that, how dramatic that was as the rebel, because, of course, our royal family is, from the public point of view, is so incredibly traditional and conventional. That's what the public see. So, that was really quite remarkable. So this biquintile, Alan, you said only really lasts the next couple of days till about the 20th?
That's right. So it's we use a narrow orb for the biquintile. So it's so yes, for the next couple of days, so Ixion's in Capricorn at the moment, transiting around 8 degrees, and so yes, are the rules we're playing by Ixion in Capricorn? We've obviously got a lot of sort of questioning going on about the rules and so on, and a lot of bending of the rules by people in authority. This is all, we're stress testing the system. Pluto's been through Capricorn, and now Pluto's lawless brother is coming in to sort of finish off the work that that Pluto was doing in terms of we're needing change in society, and so all of that sort of shadow Ixion stuff that is coming out in society is actually good. It's not bad because it's pushing us to ask that question: are the rules we're playing by the right ones? And we get that question from the Sabian symbol that for Ixion's discovery degree, which is a game of cricket. We contrast that sort of sociopathic myth with a game of cricket. It's like there's rules in a game of cricket where people are playing together. It's a team thing, and in the myth, Ixion's just breaking the rules. He's independent. He's doing his own thing, and so on and so on. So that's where we get that sort of, are the rules we're playing by the right ones,
So it's so interesting, isn't it? Because Capricorn is all about the rules, ruled by Saturn, the rules, the regulations, the way things have always been done in society. So it's connected to top-down traditional structures, whether it's monarchy or government or big corporations and institutions or big business, banking. That's all the Capricorn archetype, isn't it?
Yeah.
But so interesting. Ixion is moving through that, but also presumably it's going to remain biquintile. Although Mercury moves on, it's going to remain biquintile Uranus.
Well, that's it. Uranus will come up, and for probably a month or two, we'll have that biquintile. Totally, yes. Which will be. This is a preface, this Mercury one for what's coming up, and I think it's yes. So what is it? So Ixion is that passionate sort of involvement in Capricorn, sort of socially with society in some way, following our bliss, an evolutionary flow through to Mercury in Gemini. And so that's all about obviously communication, ideas, and so on. So we can follow our bliss in our communication, in our ideas over these next few days. And we have to be sort of unapologetic in that. The more unapologetic we are in that, we can be apologetic. We just don't need to ask for permission before. This is Ixion's whole thing. Don't ask for permission before. Ask for forgiveness afterwards. And in that, there's a freedom, and that freedom we can find in our communication in these next days. So I'm just encouraging us, and to sort of, and so this is, so I've just put out a new book on Ixion that you're talking about, and it's free for people to download at the moment for these next 2 days. Actually, it's about 4 days. So take the opportunity, guys, of the biquintile. Download a free Kindle copy of the Ixion, the Astrology of Ixion, Pluto's Lawless Brother, Our New Seeker Consciousness is the full title. You'll find it on Amazon, and it's $0 for the next 4 days. So
I've got all the link for Alan's work and that particular free copy below the video, so you can all dive in and do that. And it's a super little book. I learned a lot. As a very experienced astrologer myself, I learned a lot because we're navigating new ground with these dwarf planets.
Yes,
so
exactly.
yeah, really exciting. But presumably, with that biquintile continuing with Uranus for the next month, that is really going to bring up the revolutionary energy.
Yes, Yes, and and Uranus is moving on from the conjunction with Sedna that Uranus is in right now. So which is setting up that biquintile with Ixion over the next month or two. Um, and that's a key thing. I don't know if you want to start talking about that now, but that's
and also, of course, on the 12th of June, we have Uranus square to the nodal axis.
Right. Yes. Yes.
So, we have a lot of uppity, rebellious challenge, and I can see that for the rest of this year.
Yes.
Very, very strongly and clearly for the rest of this year. It's got to be a breakdown in order to break through to birthing a very different society. And so just before we leave Ixion is currently at 8 degrees of Capricorn. Of course, it's square to the midpoint of Saturn-Neptune. Because Neptune's at 4 of Aries, Saturn's at 12 of Aries, the halfway point is 8 of Aries, exactly to the degree square to Ixion. And so that the whole new era, that new episode, that new birth for humanity that was exact on the 20th of February, that is, both those planets, Neptune, Saturn, are moving forwards now, but Ixion is picking up and injecting more of his archetype into the birth of this new human and this new society.
Exactly. Yes, I think that's been so strong that Saturn, Neptune, moving into Aries, the conjunction, and so on. For everyone, I'm just noticing a huge change in the classes at the Dwarf Planet University, where people are just more focused. They're more, there's kind of. It's different from the Neptune in Pisces that we've been having, which has been a wonderful connecting and sort of community sort of thing. And we do a lot of community sort of building in the university classes. But now there's a lot more sort of people are on their spiritual path in a different way.
That's great to hear. It was that conjunction was smack on my natal Mercury. I really felt it, and that's the ruler of my 8th and my 10th. So so I just started in April a very intensive 2-year shamanic training course.
Oh, lovely!
Which I'm really, really enjoying to get me out of my head, actually. So
so good, beautiful.
Let's start to talk now about the Uranus-Sedna conjunction, because we had a conversation about it last time, but it's exact, I think, right about May 24th.
I think it's a week or so, yes. It's a week or two away, the exact. So, I mean, it's close at the moment. What a beautiful conjunction. I've been looking forward to it for years. It's because of, I love Uranus. I love the opening of it. I love the awakening of it, the sort of the adventure of it. I know we often get sort of unsettled by the change of it or by the surprise of it and so on, but I'm the sort of person that loves that sort of. I'm an improvisation person by background, and so I sort of.
Wow, aren't you? You're a clown, and you ran a clown.
I'm a clown. That's right. I'm a clown, and I use myself as a case study in that Ixion book, which I'm a Scorpio, so I'm a bit secretive. So it's been a bit of a breakthrough to do that. So that's lovely. So that's what I love about Uranus, and then Sedna, obviously. Sedna's our spiritual destiny. What our soul really wants to do in this life. If we think that our soul incarnates over a number of lifetimes, then and of course our soul wants to grow through those experiences. It's not sort of a random sort of experience. And so how our soul wants to grow in this lifetime is shown by our Sedna placement. And now we've got transiting Sedna at sort of 1.5 degrees or almost 2 degrees of Gemini. And so we're into that consciousness of Gemini, that sort of, we've moved from Taurus, the sort of the material, the values of Taurus we've been working with in terms of our soul growth. And now we're into consciousness. And right at the start of that experience, Uranus is conjunct, kicking that sort of spiritual destiny. So spiritual destiny at the top level, but all of the stuff we have to go through to get to our spiritual destiny, that is the soul growth that's going on in our lives. And so Uranus is kicking that off for all of us. And if we're open to the surprise of Uranus and open to the soul growth of Sedna, then it's a wonderful conjunction where we're having we're setting off on a new spiritual adventure. It's a bit like the Saturn Neptune going into Aries, but it's Uranus Sedna in Gemini, so it's about consciousness rather than about sort of a dream or spirituality in the same way that the practical Saturn Neptune is. So yes, but at the unconscious level, Sedna sends us crises that we have to transcend because she's always trying to get us onto the spiritual path. Her myth is heavy too, and at the unconscious level, we frequently don't want to do the work of growing in consciousness. And we only do it when we are forced to by a crisis in our lives. It's a crisis caused by our spiritual growth being out of alignment with what's ever practically happening in our lives. And so Sedna's pushing us to be more spiritual in some way.
Yeah, and I'm sure virtually all of you will know the myth of Sedna if you're listening to this, because Alan has talked about it and I've talked about it many times. But just very quickly, Sedna married a man who made lots of promises. He was very enchanting. He took her away to another village, but he let down all of his promises, and she lived in a situation where there wasn't much to eat. It was very scarce, very uncomfortable. Begged her father to come and rescue her. He came in his canoe. The husband, the bereft, well, hardly bereft, but the husband blew up a great storm because he was a shaman, wasn't he? And in order to save himself, Sedna's father threw Sedna out of the boat, out of the kayak. When she tried to hang on with her fingers, he chopped her fingers off, and her fingers became beautiful sea creatures of dolphins and whales, etc. She floated down to the deep and became a sea goddess. And so you still have to ask for safe passage from Sedna to cross those icy Arctic Inuit waters. She's an Inuit sea goddess. So in a nutshell, would you say, yeah?
Very good. Yes, you did it well.
Thank you. What I love also about your work, Alan, is I've always talked about Sedna as a principle of metamorphosis, that we are literally changing state, as Sedna did, from a kind of regular being into a sea goddess, living on the ocean. But you've used the word, which I love even more, of transcendence.
Yes, because she's transcending that pain and suffering that she's experiencing, well, with the husband and then with the boat storm experience. And that's a transcendence, yes, as you say, change of state from sort of being a mortal to being a goddess. Yes, she didn't die, and but there was pain, and the pain comes from holding on to the boat of reality. This is the key thing to realize. So if we're having a Sedna crisis, we need to be counterintuitive and let go of the problem rather than hold on and try and solve it. We're Saturnian, we're responsible, and we think sort of, hold on, deal with the crisis, I can do this, and it just brings more pain. And if we are experiencing repeated pain in some area of our life, think about, is it a Sedna crisis? And if it is, there's a spiritual answer to the crisis, not a practical answer. And you have to let go of the pain, whatever's causing the pain. We like our pain. It's known. It's something that we sort of, I'm here to deal with this. I can do it. It defines us, and yet it's painful. So we need to learn to let it go. It's hard. It's hard to let it go. And just like it's hard not to cling onto the boat when you're drowning in the water. You know, she's on the spiritual path when she's thrown in the water. The water represents the sort of the spiritual realm, and so when we're out of our depth, when we sort of can't sort of, you know, when we're sinking and so on, we grab hold of the boat. We don't just sort of let ourselves transcend. It's scary. We don't know where it will take us, but it's going to take us out of whatever discomfort we're in at the moment. We know that for sure. So that's what we can trust in. We can trust in that.
It's, you know, so interesting, isn't it, Alan? Because we're so programmed to live in the tangible, in the 3D tangible. That's, you know, how we've lived our lives. Our homes, or, you know, our security is very tangible in a way. And so, it's like the first rule of wing walking: don't let go of what you're hanging on to till you're hanging on to something else. You know, it's the right. I'd always think of that first law of wing walking. So, but it's so interesting that it almost Ixion is reinforcing that whole myth of let go of what you've known as the tangible, and Ixion is stepping off a cliff in a way, like the first tarot to the unknown. Sedna has no choice but to release to the unknown, but they both end up in Sedna ends up in transcendence and Ixion ends up in bliss.
Yes. Well, at the end of the myth, he ends up bound to a burning wheel and spinning through hell for all eternity. So
that's his negative expression, yes?
That's his negative expression, totally. So it's our choice whether we end up in the bliss or we end up in, you know, and yes, there's a wonderful alignment. We're being helped by both of those planets at the moment. I agree totally. And we have to accept with Sedna. We have to kind of surrender to the experience with Sedna, and we have to follow our passion with Ixion. So they're kind of going. We're working in different ways with each of those, but they're helping us in the same way, actually. Over that period, if we can do that, if we can follow our passion and surrender to the soul growth experience that's happening. Whatever's happening in our lives is perfect for our soul growth all the time. That's just how it is. So that from a Sedna point of view, it's all perfect. And if we can relax into that and just lie in the sun, then and allow peace, love and harmony, we have to allow love and harmony. It doesn't happen unless we allow it, and that's what we're learning in the world at the moment with Sedna and Gemini, and we have to nurture abundance, and everything that's happening is actually perfect for our soul growth. So we don't need to worry about that real world, that material world that you're talking about, that we worry about all the time. We don't actually have to worry about it. Just like the Buddha, we will get what we need if we are sort of embracing our soul growth at each point. It may not be what we want, but it will be what we need. So that's the beauty of Sedna. She's the Sabian symbol for Sedna's discovery is a woman airing an old bag out the window in the sunlight.
That's beautiful. That's
really.
Yeah, but it's interesting. Yeah, they're playing different roles, but they're kind of leading us to the same point. You know, Ixion is very courageously in a very rebellious way, challenging the old order, questioning it, just like Prince Harry did. Uranus is doing the same, but Sedna is also a release of the old. So they have very important roles to play in this evolutionary jump that we're going through. And I love the way you talked about Sedna being very heart-centered as well, which hadn't occurred to me. And of course, that's going to be reinforced once Jupiter moves into Leo on the 30th of June for the following 12 months. And also this whole thing about choice. that Uranus, would you say, Alan, that Uranus Sedna conjunction is really operational for the next year? Because it's still hovering around, isn't it, next spring? Northern
That's
Hemisphere.
right. Yes, the end of the year, beginning of next year, we've got another sort of 3 months of the conjunction. So, so we had a sort of a, I think within 14 minutes or something of the conjunction back in September last year. And so now we're having the exact, and I think we've got an exact again at the end of the year. So yes, this whole year, we set up last year this sort of new spiritual awakening. It's like a spiritual awakening that we're each going through. And so, yeah, I think this year we're going through a spiritual awakening where we're understanding our world in a new way, a surprising new way, and learning to let go of, the problems in there and find out with the Ixion there to find our bliss, to follow our bliss in that experience. So,
and Uranus is the real disruptor. The rebel, the disruptor, a lot of truth, a lot of revelation, a lot of shocks and surprises coming in. And I think they are just going to keep on coming in waves. And that's part of the spiritual awakening.
yes.
We can't spiritually awake unless we're aware of what has been happening in our world. Because, as I so often say, we can't build a more loving world on rotten foundations. We've got to see. If you're kind of renovating your house, you've got to pull up the floorboards and see all the nasties underneath in order to know what needs to be renewed in that building, or does the whole building need to be demolished and start again? These are and also it's really emphasizing choice in Gemini, isn't it?
It is totally, yes. I mean, I think Uranus, enabled consciousness growth in our lives. When we discovered Uranus, and yes, into Gemini now with that consciousness growth, and conjunct Sedna and soul growth. We have choice. It's a matter of how open we are to the options that are happening at any one point, how much we can take advantage of them. And so that's, I think, the key to working with Uranus is that openness, that sort of joy in that freedom, finding a joy in that freedom that's the Uranus brings. And
and also where we put our focus, where we put our attention, because you get more of what you think about all day long.
You do, that's right.
They're actually feeding the reality we either want, or if we're not very conscious, what we don't want. We get tangled up in the distraction and the war and the awfulness and the suffering, and not to deny that it's absolutely ghastly what's going on in the world in many parts of the world. We have to see that, but we then have to turn our attention and our creativity to, okay, guys, okay, humanity, what can we do differently?
What can we do? Yes, exactly.
Focus our attention to build a much more abundant, beautiful world than this for every living being.
Yes.
I mean, that's really what I'm trying to use my astrological work for.
And you do so beautifully. People love you for it. It's much appreciated.
But yeah, because I just feel so passionately that the vast majority of the human population wants a way better world than this. How could we not, with so much suffering? So this is the galvanizing force. I think that Ixion is part of, Uranus is part of, Sedna is part of, and also Eris is part of this too.
Yes, totally. Yes, we're going to talk about Eris next month together, and because I'm putting out a book on Eris as well, and
another rebel.
Yes, she's so beautiful. I mean, I love Eris. I love Ixion too. Yes, I guess I do love the rebels. She's a spiritual trickster, Eris. She's helping us we fool ourselves, and we like to be fooled. It's safe. It feels safe at the time. And it's just how we get by. We can't deal with everything. And so, but, Eris wants everyone to be included, everyone to be valued for who they are. And there's a fulfillment in that. There's a beauty in that, and there's a power in that. That's the beauty of Eris. There's a female power. She's the sister of Mars in myth, and she, with each new challenge, her head rises to meet the heavens. She can do anything. And she lays waste equally to both sides on the battlefield, and I love that. Her problem is the battle. It's not it's not one side or the other.
Yeah, she loves the battle. Yes. But she's bringing in very feminine energy. Sedna is very much divine feminine, and this is what we need to rebalance our world as well. So they're playing a very, very important role. And Alan, this is a kind of surprise question because we didn't discuss this before we started recording, but we've got this very powerful kind of climax crescendo happening in July. Where all the Uranus, Neptune, Pluto lock in to that 4 degrees of their signs, mini triangle, and Jupiter opposing Pluto as it just moves into Leo. And it opposes Pluto as well. So you have a huge force, a huge planetary force happening in July. And July is an incredibly busy month. I'm going to have to do, I don't know how many videos. There's so many things happening astrologically in July. But that just feels like a real crescendo and climax.
Totally. Yes.
And I think have any views? The planets are part of the picture as well in that.
I mean, you put me on the spot, but let's have a think. I think Mercury is moving backwards in July, so we're in a real period of rethinking all of that big change that we've been talking about in terms of those planets. How is that working for us? So I agree. Yes, I think it's going to be a crescendo, a sort of a climax of the change that we've been setting in place with the Saturn Neptune and this awakening that we're having now with the spiritual growth and we're all experiencing this at our current consciousness level, and so the disruptions in the world are all part of this, and so they will also probably come to a head in that time. I
think so. I was talking to Lee Harris, if you know Lee Harris, last week, and he was channeling the Z's at the time, and when I asked him the same question, he described it as an explosion.
Yes,
that was the word they used, an explosion.
Yeah. Well, I've been sort of looking forward to the Uranus Sedna conjunction and thinking of it as an explosion of consciousness. I think that's what we're having. I hope that's what we're having. But with Sedna, some of those explosions are going to be quite sort of crisis-like, So the more we can be accepting, the more we can welcome the explosive consciousness crisis that's happening, the better it goes. Allow the love and harmony, nurture the abundance is the top level of Sedna, and transcend. Allow that transcendence to a higher spiritual understanding of ourselves and our world. It's that's what Sedna is always trying to do for us.
Yeah.
And so
Uranus lighting the match, and I don't know how you feel about this, Alan, but I sense with that conjunction over the next year, essentially, that's operational between Uranus and Sedna, we could see some big changes in the Earth. Changing sea levels. That's also Saturn, Neptune, of course, changing sea levels. We could make some massive discoveries about the deep seas, different ecosystems, different civilizations. Different beings that may be related to us under the ocean, in the earth, a lot of ancient knowledge coming out, a lot of new medicines from those new ecosystems and plants, huge discoveries, because we know very little about the deep seas and the oceans, don't we? They haven't been hugely explored in the same way that we've explored the earth.
That's it. That's it. No, we haven't. That's it. And that's definitely Sedna's realm. So I think we are doing that. And the Pluto in Aquarius is playing into this too, in terms of the sort of the different understanding, the technology that we can use to investigate the deeper areas and so on and so on. So
because they're in aspect as well.
Yeah.
Pluto's an aspect to Sedna and Uranus. So, yes, and I think, it's interesting. I've even felt, and actually a couple of people have written to me about this, that not only are people starting to speak light language more spontaneously, somebody I know very well just spontaneously starting to speak light language, but some people I've also been in contact with are spontaneously in a group started to speak an ancient language that they all understood between themselves, just spontaneously. And and also communication with those beautiful sea creatures that Sedna birthed. I mean, Joan Ocean can do this very well, communicating with the dolphins and the whales, but I think more of us are going to be able to do that because they're helping to lead our evolution, because they're high dimensional creatures, aren't they?
Totally, exactly. That's right. And we're able to tune in more and more. I think this is, Salacia and Gong, two of the other new planets, enabling us in terms of this light language and finding these, connections with other beings and so on that we're talking about.
Yeah, I really felt that with Salacia, and it's something you might want to explore further, Alan, because I thought that could potentially either transits to people, such as a Uranus transit to people's natal Salacia, or their just a powerful Salacia transit could ignite light language, because it's all about the light. And quite a few people contacted me saying, yes, at that transit, I happened to spontaneously speak light language, which was quite amazing. So with your network, because I don't keep a database, I stopped that a few years ago, but with your network, you could start to explore, is there a link between people starting to speak light language and powerful Salacia transits, or transits to their natal Salacia?
Definitely. No, yes, I hear that in the classes as we're talking about Salacia. Yes, I do. And I'm, after this Eris book, which we're launching next month, I'm doing a book on Salacia. That's my next project. So
I love Salacia. I love them all, actually, in their different aspects.
Yeah, me too. But I think Salacia is special. She's special. So, just in terms of, I'm keen. I'm so happy I've got the book on Ixion out, because I think Ixion is a key one to introduce people to these new planets, a bit like Pluto in a way. Be independent, find sort of something yourself. And Salacia is another one like that, that's able to connect with people in a way that's appealing and protective at the same time, and still sort of intimate.
Yeah, very loving.
Very loving. Higher love consciousness, yeah.
I love consciousness, and I also feel that she represents the new light codes coming in, the new kind of geometry of light coming in, particularly because she's conjunct Saturn, which is about structure, but it's also about mathematics, isn't it? So you not just structured water becoming more important, but the structured light.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, totally. Yeah.
She's got a really important part to play, I think.
She has. Yeah, we're so lucky. We're so lucky with her. I love her. I just love her very much. I have her conjunct my North Node, so I'm...
Oh, beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Yes, you're blessed. So the wonderful thing about all the work and research you're doing with the dwarf planets is, Alan, that it makes us raise our eyes, raise our vision beyond all that is. the unraveling of societies, etc. It helps us to keep our vision high and have inspiration that we are really moving to a very different place, a much more loving, a much more evolved place, a much more equitable place for all, love and respect for all creatures, including the animals, the trees, the plants, all. It's quite Buddhist, all living beings. And the work is really helping us do that, to give us some of the very important parts of the vision that we can then start to integrate and embody and say, yes, the cosmos is providing this to us, because these dwarf planets have been discovered to give us that vision, to give us that compass, that map, that we are moving to a very different place in our consciousness.
Totally. Yes, we have to see that. We have to see these new planets, these new energies, this new consciousness in our lives, and then it's real. Then we make it real. It's real for us, and as you say, it lifts us out of the mundane that sort of traps us a little bit. And they're all playing their part in doing that, and we have to do the work of onboarding the consciousness to enable us to see the bigger picture.
We've got to keep them in our focus, in our minds, in our meditations, in our vision for where we are headed as humanity. So I think I really want to honour your work, Alan, that you're doing an incredible service for humanity in where we're headed, and we're heading there quickly.
We are. This is the beauty of it. Yes, there's a lot of change happening, and I mean, I was amazed to realise that it took 50 years from the time Pluto was discovered until the first astrology book was put out about the meaning of 50 years, and we already had Uranus and Neptune and so on at that stage, and we were working with them and so on. And so, we're diving into these new ones because it's just sort of 20 years since they've been discovered. And so, yes, they've all been discovered now because we need this new consciousness. We're ready for these new consciousness energies, and we need them to navigate the world that we're in, the more complex world that we're in at the moment. And as you say, to lift ourselves out of that mundane, which we create our world by how we see it and how we respond to it. This is kind of a Machian thing, the higher octave of Uranus. We're always creating our world by how we interact with it, and how we see it conditions how we interact with it. And so, as you're saying, we need to lift our vision to the higher view, and then we actually get a lot of energy from these new planets, from that consciousness. We get a sort of a psychic rejuvenation with our Maya. Each of them gives us something in that way that helps us deal with the mundane world, but we're looking at it in a higher way.
Yeah, well, they give us inspiration, don't they?
They do. I mean, particularly Vada. Vada is kind of inspiration consciousness, and she wins the battles of life with hope and with inspiration. Hope and inspiration are powerful forces. They're really strong, and so the more hopeful and the more inspired we can be, the better our life will go.
Yeah, beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you so much, Alan, for your time. I know you're mega busy in running Dwarf Planet University and writing books, but yeah, I've really enjoyed this conversation. And as I say, I've learned a lot myself as an old hand in astrology at some of the material you're producing. So just thank you so much for all you're doing to help humanity more broadly in the world. Yeah.
Thank you so much. That's so beautiful to hear. Thank you. It's lovely work. I love doing it. And thank you for the work you